You guys see this okay? It's kind of small. Alright, so this is a quick update, short and simple, nothing too complicated, around some of the more recent user conversations that we've had and where the product roadmap is today. And then maybe a couple of other extraneous things that I just pulled in for fun.
Is that the cowboy template? What's the...
This is letterpress.
Letterpress.
Yeah, I'm just trying a different thing, it's not our toes. So here is the list of users, most of the list of users that we've shown Handle to so far, and the ones in red, and this includes us internally for the people who've gotten onto the system now and are using it on a somewhat regular basis. And the folks in red are the people who will probably be in our sort of like core target usage. I think all of us internally will be able to give a ton of feedback, but I actually pulled myself out of that because I no longer get over 50 emails a day. I think it would have been great target user for us, a couple months ago, but no longer anymore. But I'll still use the product, don't worry. and now we're at a point where we sort of have like this 4 or 5, focused user set that we can go to. 2 internal, 2 external. We have other people who I think would be phenomenal, like Mike Lee was giving us great feedback just the other day, but I don't think we're at a point necessarily where we need to dig down and have those deeper sessions, because we've learned a lot from our initial discussions with Bill and Gumi that we haven't had a chance to really implement yet, and so I think we have our work stocked up for us from those discussions, which I'll dig into in a minute. But I think we have a list of a couple other people who would be great to dig into when the time is right. And then I put a little asterisk by the people who are active users today. So we have Gumi and Nancy and Lauren who are outside the building actives, and then a lot of other people who really, really want email MVP and faster emails.
What's red?
Red is like sort of our core base of maybe like advisory product group, where like they're sort of squarely in our target market, and we want to be able to get the product to work for those people. And so really like everybody like in this maybe top half that gets over 50 emails a day, like I think this product will be able to work pretty well for, and particularly people who already are used to relying on a structured system. Like I feel pretty confident that when we get this to work in the coming iterations, like we should be able to get this product to be something that these people can use it pretty actively. Because I'll dig through, but like some of the systems that some of these people have are so taxing in terms of the overhead. They're hacking together like these systems that effectively do what we're trying to accomplish.
And Mike was very active yesterday, so we need to stand the test of time.
Inbox zero. I think it was like his first day back on the app since alpha, and hit inbox zero right away, which is, kind of awesome.
Ooh, friggin' yeah.
So here's Gumi's system, and so quick background about Gumi. He was a long-time Googler. I think while at Google he was getting like over 500 emails a day, which I can't even imagine how you could come up with, how you could deal with that. And so while he was getting just slaughtered with email at Google, he came up with a very, very elaborate, strict system to deal with all of that and manage everything that he needed to do. And he still uses elements of that system today. Then I think after Google, he was maybe VP of product at Siri, was that it? And now is doing something at Apple, or maybe he's left Apple. And so his system is that he uses his native email client and ties that into things. And so he's created his own system for taking email and triaging it into tasks. And the way he does that is he sends a link of the email, which creates a task and enters in all the information he needs to. Things runs natively on your machine, and so he can quickly pull up things whenever he needs to and just jot in any notes he wants to and just have that system capture everything. Then he'll go through and sort of organize everything into projects. One thing that he does, seems like with high frequency, is have his daily reviews and his weekly reviews. And that sort of ties into 2 states that are built into things. You have your things that are on your today list, and you have your next list. And so every week during his weekly review, he'll go through and pull out all the different items that are on his next list. Pull in all the different items that are in his projects and put them onto his next list if he wants to do them that week. And then every night, he'll go through and queue up what he wants to have in his today list. And through those daily reviews and that weekly review, he'll just know what he needs to get done every day. And then things is actually pretty bad with sync, but he's willing to tolerate that and manually sync his list to mobile every single day. And Bill's system is actually kind of similar. The key difference is that he uses Evernote, and he follows a system that's called The Secret Weapon. I think it's thesecretweapon.org or .com. There's been some posts on Yammer about it. Check it out. There's some pretty cheesy videos where they walk through it, but it's actually a pretty well thought out system. Bill tries to follow that. And so what he does is actually, again, quite similar. Like, he'll triage all of his emails, except instead of pushing them to things, he'll push them into Evernote. And he'll use that as well for like notes from meetings, notes on the go, and like little things he wants to put in mobily. But again, he'll append a link. Like, first he'll install an Evernote plugin into his mail client, and then he'll append a link to that email from within Evernote. And he's not able to access that email anywhere. Like, he's only able to access it locally off that machine because his email is not cloud-based. And so it's an extra pain point and friction, but he's willing to do it. And then from there, his system is that he'll have this note in Evernote. The next steps are the note title. And so maybe it'll be, follow up with handle folks to schedule a meeting, follow up with, super hot company that's raising right now, or whatever that is. And then inside that note are all of the details that he'll need that are tied to that, tied to that next step. He actually also pulls out Gmail on the side just in case he needs to, search for anything. But that's how it is today. And then from there, he actually has an elaborate tagging system that's more or less the system that comes in with the Secret Weapon, and it's a combination of a couple things. I'll show you a screenshot of it. Or actually, maybe we'll just open it. It's a really good point. And it's kind of a clever system in a way. Like most of this metadata he doesn't actually use. Like the thing that he has to stick with though is when, and the when is sort of his finite state machine. And so like if there's something that needs to be done, today, he'll stick it in his now bucket. Something that needs to be done a little later, he'll stick it in his next bucket. And then things that maybe some point he'll get to, he'll stick into the someday bucket. Waiting is another bucket. And so like he always has like a state of where these tasks are in their series of actions. And what's kind of nice about it is that you can apply a lot of other tags as well. Like, tags aren't mutually exclusive, which is kind of the beauty of tags. So he'll have his projects. So like if there are active deals he'll looking at, that might be one project. If there are things that he needs to follow up with around like him looking for a new opportunity or something to pursue, he'll lump all that into a bucket. The where and a tag is more of like context. Like if I'm at home, I can pull up everything theoretically that has my home tag on it. If there's something that like if Amy's a partner at my venture fund, I could just pull up everything that has a tag with Amy, and the next time I talk with Amy, we'll just hammer through all the different things that we need to address. He doesn't really use those tags as much, but they'll have them there, so you can occasionally get to them. But where that whole system ties together really well is that he'll do daily reviews to sort of figure out where things are in each of these states, and then a weekly review to make sure that everything's being addressed, and think from like a top-down level of what needs to be done. In addition, he merges notes very often, and this is something he actually stopped the point that he was making, I think, 3 or 4 times during that meeting, and said, like, this is a huge feature. What's beautiful about it is that he gets to take different notes that he might have doubled up, or maybe like he triaged an extra email, and then lump it all into one into one Evernote file. And so he'll constantly just have all the information he needs in one, sort of combined what we think was a task. And that made me feel really good about multiple emails to a task. Maybe in the future we'll extend that to just include every possible file. Right now we have notes, which I tend to use. We haven't really had a lot of discussion, so that's something that we might want to dig into. And then this is where it got a little crazy. He has calendar templates. And so if there's a day where he knows he will just be in the office, he sort of has his day mapped out in terms of like a theoretical template around like what he'll do. So he'll have his breakfast meeting at 8 a.m., then he'll have his most important thing he wants to get to immediately because his energy levels can fluctuate throughout the day, and he wants to get his most important thing done like early in the day. Then he'll have his like next important meeting that'll come up while he still has a lot of energy, lunch meeting, and then like maybe less important meetings or meetings that might be sort of in between, like later in the day when he's dying out of energy. And then he also has like his template structure. If he's at a conference, he'll sort of figure out like how he can structure things. If he's going to be in San Francisco for the day, he has like his other template of how to follow. Someday we'll get to that.
So those are like fake calendars that he just puts these things into?
Roughly.
Okay.
He uses Tungle.me, Tungle.me for scheduling, and so knowing like what type of day it is, he'll perhaps like have available slots for people to take up those times. And he also, like right now he's actually in a state where he doesn't have an assistant, but normally he does. And so he's trying to move to the system in the future, and so he's setting up these templates so that when he does work with an assistant again, that person can know how to structure his day based on what he's doing. And his thought there, which I thought was actually very clever, is that it's kind of like how everybody operates in inertia. Like to go from 0 to 1 is oftentimes an awful lot of work because you need to get your mental state ready to get out of not doing anything starting your day. But once you're operating and running, going from 1 to n can actually be a lot less frictionful.
Yeah.
And so his thought is that, let me get myself into a routine, or I don't need to try as hard to go from 0 to 1 and then get up and running every single day, which I thought was very powerful. I think that there's like that idea, that thesis is something that we can try to incorporate. And I think that's kind of what our app is trying to do as well, like on to the idea of what you want to do every day. You need to get into the habit of just looking through the system and not having to think about it. Like I think when you're sort of thinking, looking at a task of things, that's when things get a little fuzzy and action comes up. But if you can get rid of that and get rid of all the cognitive loops there, that can be pretty powerful.
Question.
Yeah.
Did Bill happen to mention why he chose Evernote instead of any of the taskers that are available?
We sort of talked about it, and I think a couple of reasons came up. One is that this system, the secret weapon, is sort of like publicized out there, and they walk through the system, they teach the system on their website, and they use Evernote. They decided to use Evernote. Why that is, they chose that, I'm not sure. But two was that this point here, captures everything, was very important to him because he's big on condensing all information related to a next action into one note, into one item. And Evernote does a pretty good job. I mean, despite being a little clunky or taking extra clicks at times, it's a good mobile device for capturing all notes or information, like maybe even an image or like a picture of a business card or anything like that into the system. And it works well with the desktop client, it works well on the cloud. And at the end of the day, it just works. It always works really well.
It's pretty ubiquitous, yeah.
Yeah, I think the combination of that.
He had mentioned that the cross-platform.
Yeah.
He showed us his iPad, and he's like, "Yeah, I've tried out these to-do lists." It was like every single one. It was like a dozen of them. Like these all suck.
It's so fun. And they're not cheap either. Sometimes they're $30.
That's funny, actually, I never thought about that. But it was nice to hear him bash all of our competition.
I have another question.
Sure.
Back where you showed us the little table of users.
Oh yeah.
What identifies the core audience, the red ones? What makes those the target?
Excellent question. I think the first thing is really does this person get a ton of email a day? And while I was digging through this, sort of the goal we'd always been going for, I think, a year ago the discussion was people get 200 emails a day, and then, more recently of late it's kind of been people get 100 emails a day, and then, I sort of arbitrarily do a line in the sand at 50. I think the real pain point we're going after is people who just get enough email addressed to them individually. I think one thing that gets a little unclear is these automated emails or these individuals to me. If you get enough emails addressed to you that there are next steps about, that it just ends up being an unmanageable process where you have to have some kind of very rigid system to be able to manage all. Like someone who experiences that pain point. And so I sort of arbitrarily do that line in the sand at 50. Whether it's right or wrong, who knows, but I think it's sort of a proxy. And then where the people are red are the people who we have access to have a lot of conversations with, who sort of have that acute pain point. I think the other 4 people here, we would be able to have access to have those conversations with, but they're all pretty busy. Mike Lee came on very recently, and so we just haven't had the deep, in-depth discussions to try to get as much feedback as we can out of them. One thing that I don't want to signal at all is that a number of us here at Handle, including myself and including you, are not highlighted in red. I just assume that because I just figured we probably aren't getting that many emails. But we need to, our feedback is very valuable. We'll continue to contribute and things like that, and still be as important as we can be to the product process. I just figured, at least for myself particularly, email overload, don't know, I'm not really pulling my hair out about it. It's when I'm winding down my roll.
I'd say the behavior, the build, the behavior is what Steve like would call the early evangelists. Like these are people that the painting was so cute, myself, and then dude, like the painting was so cute that you just like cobbled together whatever you could to fix it, and that's not the I think the process he recommends is like, well, if those people who are just in such acute pain, you can solve it, but obviously you want to solve it in a generalizable enough way that you can then resell the product. So I think the trick in this is how do we take the Bill's needs and then come up with an elegant enough design so that you solve his needs, but then it's still approachable by people who are not willing to tolerate that sort of overhead, right? Like the fundamental need you see, obviously he's super acute, but that latent need, I think our hypothesis exists very deeply into the population, and if you had something that was just so perfect, it was so good that Bill could deal with his 200 emails a day and feel totally organized, that if then you went to somebody who did 25 emails a day, it would just be like, the mental burden would still be greatly reduced, right? It's not as order of magnitude as much gain as for Bill, multiply the time savings by 200, but 25 times sometimes savings would still feel better to that person. That's the hope.
Yeah, and the conversations with those two people in particular, Gumi and Bill, was really just trying to learn how they have come up with ways to address like this problem, like what their system is, and how we can best go about that.
It is interesting to see how these have evolved.
Oh, interesting.
Because like mine has evolved. I mean, it's very organic evolution.
Yeah.
Mine's evolved in a different way. I'm a heavy foldering system and now handle. I never found a good task list.
And Bill, until very recently, was a to-do-list
Right.
evangelist, and then completely killed that system and went with this. I don't ever know sort of the secret weapon system.
Right.
It's better.
So I have a question. If he wants to take everything from his next to his now, right? If he has a daily review, that would involve taking everything from next into now. How does he do that? He like selects them all, and then he drags his own new tag.
Precisely. During his
Wow.
his daily reviews, he'll just change like the state of those tags, which is going through. And I'm not sure if you can batch delete. You can batch add new tags, and you can batch delete tags. I never know. But then every week, in his weekly review, he'll go through and like things that are completed, he'll go through and just delete all the tags, push them into like the completed workbook, and do what I think of as just an awful lot of overhead. That actually, I'm not sure if I pulled this point.
He also the queries of the tags, right? That was integral to his tagging system.
Yeah.
So he'd say, "Oh, these are my next tags," and as you could just like move one by one to now, they disappear off the list, and so there's a start and the end, and he was very rigorous about that, which I thought was interesting because those are basically our list views.
Yeah.
One thing that he mentioned was that like last week when we met him on a Friday, he'd just been swamped all week. It was just one of those weeks, and his system tended to fall apart. Like he couldn't stick with the overhead when it got to be such a busy week, and that made me feel like golden inside. It's like, all right, we can reduce that overhead for you, great. like we're sort of in the right direction, and I think that's a key challenge with any system. I mean, for me, handle like the times when it's fallen apart was just when there's like a lot of stuff to do, or like when my email backlog builds up. And so I think that's just an interesting point that we'll have to evaluate, because like the ideal system would work all the time.
I think the ideal system is mobile for a lot of the triage, and you're like, as you're in meetings checking the emails, they're getting triaged in a trusted system, and then like literally you just never come out of a meeting without being, you are bouncing at that state, which is like.
And in the future, we'll have to put Sean's phone in a shoebox for all meetings that we have. This was the Evernote thing. Next. And so this is kind of just like a summary of a lot of the those high-level takeaways from those conversations? I think we kind of hit all along the already.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. So Mike Lee, so he has used our projects to create a finance state machine. So all different levels of his recruiting pipeline, he made his different projects. Right now, like this is what, minimal instruction kind of beta onboarding.
Yeah, actually, he just
took that upon himself.
he didn't go through the beta onboarding process.
Oh,
He was
is
an
that right?
alpha, and he just sort of came back and Jonathan was like, "Hey, my account's not working. Like, he set my password." And
Just decided randomly yesterday, "Hey, I'm gonna use Handle." And
Like,
then I
saw-
got like 20 emails from him.
And this finite state machine, it's actually a lot of clicks and a lot of steps to go through and change projects now with the metadata multiplex and all that stuff. So he's jumping through a lot of hoops just to be able to do this, which is awesome. And then the other things, so like state machines.
So what are the steps of this finite state machine? Because I would hope that with important and today that you wouldn't need to use projects as your finite state machine.
So for him, he has a specific workflow of like a candidate through a funnel.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't remember exactly what the folders were, but it's something like I could imagine it's like untouched lead, candidate who's like scheduling interviews, candidate who's like in final steps, something like that.
Huh.
What I found personally with today and important and then regular tasks was that I'm suspecting that just wasn't enough states for me, or I had some other ideas around why, like I have not been able to support that system. But one of my suspicions is like number of states and like the way that you're able to organize and restructure everything.
I'm the opposite. I use like today and everything else, and I move it to today.
Yeah.
Look at it. Anything and everything else gets looked at like once in a or hope you're not in everything
And
else.
it's a good point. Like the reviews, I think, is a critical part to making any of these systems work. Like Jonathan sort of realized this point a while ago, and it turns out Gumi is doing this. It turns out Bill is doing this, and they swear by it. Like they say it's one of the most important parts of the process, which I think is something that we need to like. I think this will be a really important part of the product at some point. How we implement that, well, we'll kind of figure that out. But I think that's something really, really useful to have taken away. Another thing that came up was this idea of capturing everything. The way that Gumi and Bill both do it is they just want to be able to plug in anything and throw it into the system and be able to trust it. The corollary to that is you have to be able to trust the system. And so I think at some point like these email sync issues and fetching speed and stuff like that will start to hammer down. And I think some of those discussions have already started. And then it was also just nice validation to see people hacking together these kludgy systems to get emails and tasks working. I mean, we kind of are all feeling great about the hypothesis now, but just whenever I see this, it's like, all right, right direction. And so this ties into like what the high-level product goals are right now. Figure out a tasking system that works. The current test is really to unify the tasker and the triager interface and make that a more cohesive experience. But then also, things like integrating the reviews and like figuring out what the state machine might look like, all of that, I think, and like maybe some element of like what capturing looks like will all be coming up. But I think in the short term, like, these are probably the three things that I would think of. And then email MVP. We've had a bunch of discussions around that. We have an ongoing list. We're going to keep pulling tickets into that, and hopefully never use Gmail in this office ever again. And then this all ties into who the next users are. Sean already sort of walked through a bunch of this, but the end takeaway is, June 4th is sort of the rough date for that pitch. Maybe it'll change back and forth.
Well, I will be pitching June 4th.
Okay.
I think how strongly I say to people there, like, you gotta start using it this week, I think is more of a sliding gate. It might just be like, hey, here's where we are, we're in another check. Or it might be like, no, we feel really good, like everybody get on it, here's the way we're supposed to start using it. So I think the second one is a higher bar. I think, like for example, the tasker, you can show people the tasker and triaging into the tasker, and that's about as advanced as the state of the art is in any tasker anywhere, right? And so you won't detect that there's an issue in a demo. I think you only detect that there's an issue once you actually try to live out of the tasker. So I think I don't want to promote it heavily internally until it's to the point with me at least where it's like I can't help but go into Handle. Now I'm still, especially for like kind of the triage task interaction, like having to try to go in, especially during like the busy week.
Yeah.
Like, Bill, this has been a bad week, so it's kind of like that. Like,
So we might have the opportunity to wow a couple people. We'll see. It'll be ongoing line in the sand.
did Nick? Have you got Nick on there?
Nick came in and we set him up with his Gmail account, his personal Gmail,
Okay.
and I did a really. I emphasized setting a low bar, and emphasized like a lot of the bugs and things like that, and we'll check actually to see how.
Some people who I think will be more patient or
Yeah, and Nick has been bugging me
try
for
really
months. So
hard
I try to get
to
him.
want to try it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, that's really the gist of it. We'll have this opportunity. I mean, like, this is just an interesting milestone for us to have, like, a month from now. Maybe we'll have people get on the product and then maybe not. But if so, we'll have a bunch of things that we can add in. And I think obviously it comes in two buckets, email MVP and lead features and things like that. That's just it. I've got some more information on email MVP, but I think we're all kind of just be on the.
I think that was a good hot seat question last week, by the way. I think
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
a lot of discussion that's been really healthy. So
Yeah.
thanks for that.
What was the question?
Why don't we just
Like
do email
users.
to get users, right?
I think
Sorry, oversimplify.
people were asking questions later, and I had a chance to distill it in my brain. I think the question was like, before we go into a beta, like what are the goals of the beta?
Gotcha.
And I think I was a little disillusioned with the last beta because I didn't know what the goals were, and I thought the goals were teach us something, we want feedback, and what it turned out being was that people stopped using it for the exact reasons that we suspected they'd stop using it, and so I didn't really feel like we learned a whole lot, and we just got our hopes up and then got our hopes dashed. At least I felt that way. But we did get some new daily active users, which is great. So before the Menlo rollout, I just wanted to know, like, when we bring these people on board, what do we hope they will do for us? And I think the answer might be open their wallets. And I think another answer might be that they will like use it on a daily basis and give us feedback that we don't know already. But if we already suspect reasons why they won't use it every day, then maybe we shouldn't expect them to use it every day. You know what I mean?
I think when the product is to that point of getting like people sort of up in this list to who have like that acute pain point to be able to use it, like I think there are a number of people on Menlo who would love to be able to get like who fall squarely in that target.
Yeah.
But also awesome discussion last week. Super glad you brought that up and just really happy with the discussion that came out after that because I think that's a sign of a healthy organization where you can have a lot of those debates and then have you bring up issues and stuff like that. I found it super useful, and I'm pretty excited about the direction we're going.
Cool. Thank you. Hot seat.
I would like to not call it hot seat anymore.
What's your thought?
I think we should call it open mic or
Why don't you tell the truth?
or yeah, because I feel like hot seat implies some sort of mean intent, or
Okay.
that the question must be like an